and welcome back, or welcome if you are new here. If you don't know who I am, my name's Cheyenne and I am currently a second year vet student. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my background and my story, just with how I got interested in vet med and basically everything I did in order to be accepted into vet school. I also wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about VMCAS and some things that I feel like are really important and foundational for your application. And so hopefully my advice and my experiences will be useful in getting you guys accepted into vet school. And I do have some notes on my phone, so I may look down from time to time, but pay no mind. But yeah, with all that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the video. So just a little bit of background about me. I was born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas, and I chose to attend the University of Kansas for undergrad. I entered as a psychology major, and honestly, I realized very quickly that that just was not for me, but I was really lost and I didn't know what I was interested in. And in fact, this was an issue that I had had pretty much my whole life. Growing up, people would always ask me, what do you want to do when you're older? What do you want to go to school for? And obviously it just got more intense when I got towards the end of high school. You know, I had to make decisions, figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And I chose psychology because I thought that I might want to do counseling, maybe become a high school counselor. And it sounded good to me and I was really interested in it. So I went that route. But honestly, I just knew that I wasn't super passionate about it. So I was struggling with that a lot for my first semester of college. So when I was at KU for my first semester, I had to take various gen eds as well as some courses that were required for the psych major. And one of them was basically just like an introduction to the major. So it talked about what classes you would be taking, and they also discussed potential job prospects. And on that list of jobs was veterinary medicine. And if you are anything like me and maybe you don't know too much about vet med, I was very confused as to how you could be a psychology major and then go on to a job in the medical field and pursue vet school. It didn't really make sense to me. I later learned that your major actually doesn't matter as long as you hit all the prerequisites, but we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that later on in the video. I wasn't totally convinced when I saw this, although it did definitely spark my interest. Like many people, I've been an animal lover my whole life, and science was something that was fine. I wasn't like super interested in it. I would take science courses because I had to and I would do well in them, but I wasn't especially passionate about it, so it didn't convince me right away, but I did do a lot of research. I thought about it a lot, and I just could not get the idea of being a veterinarian out of my head. With my research, I looked up vet schools and, you know, how to get into vet school, what kind of GPA do you need, what kind of classes do I need to take, all that good stuff, and eventually I decided that this was the career for me. One of my problems was that, unlike a lot of my peers in the field, I did not grow up wanting to be a veterinarian. So I felt like I was severely lacking in terms of experience, which is a very important part of your application that, again, we will talk about in a little bit. So I finished up that semester, and when spring semester came around, I actually did end up changing my major to biology. I could have stayed with a psychology major. I tried to, actually, but I just found that it was a lot more difficult to try and fulfill all my prerequisites for vet school and also stay within the major. So I thought the smart and easy thing to do would be to switch to a biology major. I also started searching high and low for clinics that would take someone with zero experience, and honestly this was a major stressor for me because I was worried that no one would want to hire me. But thankfully I did find this amazing clinic in Kansas City, Missouri. They're called Animal Medical Center, and they were just fantastic to me. They hired me on and they taught me so incredibly much that, again, I'll talk about in a little bit more in depth. But yeah, I was really lucky to have found that job, and I worked there for the next 2 summers of college, and I loved it. Eventually I did end up switching to another clinic in Lawrence just because it was a lot easier to work part-time in the same city that I was attending school in. So still have a lot of love for AMC. They were amazing to me, but I did end up switching to another animal clinic in Lawrence. In addition to getting more veterinary and animal experience, I also tried to get more involved on campus, and I found this amazing organization called Omega Phi Alpha. And basically it is a service organization that serves many different aspects of the community, and it was seriously one of the best things I could have ever done. Not just like because it looked good on an application, which it did, but I can't say enough good things. I met so many wonderful service-driven people in that organization, and I learned so much from them. And I got some awesome leadership experience, and I just met some people that have definitely changed my life for the better. So seriously, so thankful for that chapter of my life, and Yeah. So over my next few years at KU, I just tried really hard to build up my resume. I found all the prerequisites that I need to take for the schools I wanted to apply to. So I was taking those courses. I was getting veterinary experience. I was performing leadership and getting involved on campus and all that jazz. And eventually the time came for me to apply during the 2018 VMCAS cycle for the class of 2023. And if you don't know, VMCAS stands for Veterinary Medical College Application Service. I knew that as a first-time applicant with probably minimal experience compared to a lot of other applicants, it was a very real possibility that I would be rejected for my first round of applications. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I knew that that was a serious possibility just because vet school is so incredibly competitive. But ideally, I did want to go ahead and attend vet school right after undergrad. The idea of taking a gap year didn't really appeal to me because I'm someone who just wants to, go straight through and get it done with. So, yeah, I was really hoping to get accepted on my first round of applications. So before we get too much into the weeds with all of the application stuff and the fundamentals that I think are important for applying to vet school, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my statistics. Obviously, it's been a few years since I applied to vet school, but hopefully this will help guide you a little bit and maybe give you a baseline. Obviously, just know that my statistics don't really matter for your application. Things can be very variable when it comes to applying to vet school. So obviously GPA and all that stuff is important, but I just wanted to share this information with you guys in case you find it helpful at all. I know I could have used some baselines and some references when I was applying for vet school. So I also do want to say that most vet schools, if not on the AAVMC website, most vet schools will have application statistics so that for the schools that you want to apply to, you can get a good idea of kind of what the ballpark range is for the students that they accept. Okay, so starting off with my degree, I got a Bachelor of Science in Biology. Specifically, it was Ecology, Evolution, and Organismal Biology. So, fun. My cumulative GPA at the time of application was a 3.9, and my science GPA, I want to say, was like 3.7, I think. I know that they have separate fields on VMCAS for both cumulative and science GPA, or they calculate both of those at least. So I believe that's what my science GPA was. Not 100% sure, but somewhere in that range. So for the GRE, and side note, the GRE is definitely becoming something of the past. I know a lot of schools are phasing it out. My school that I attend is not even looking at GRE anymore, and I know that's true for a lot of schools. So this may or may not be applicable for you now or for whoever's watching this in a few years, but in case you're wondering, I didn't do horribly, but it wasn't my strongest test ever, but it was something that I needed to do at the time to get into vet school, so it had to be done. So let's see. For verbal, I got a 161, quantitative 154, and analytical 4.5, which, yeah, I think quantitative was my weakest one. It was a little bit of a struggle, but that's all right. I still got accepted, and I'm in vet school now, so that's all that matters. So for experience hours, all of my hours came from small animal veterinary practices. So that's the only experience I have. I don't have necessarily what they would call animal experience because VMCAS looks at that differently between animal and veterinary experience. So just keep that in mind. I would have loved to have gotten a broader range of experiences, maybe with equine and exotics, but at the time when I was preparing to apply for vet school, I just, quite frankly, did not really have the time or the means to go around to a bunch of different places and get all these different experiences. So I focused all of my experience on one area that I was most interested in because I do plan to practice small animal medicine. Now, that is something that I will say that you can definitely improve on compared to me. Having a wide range of experiences is definitely an awesome thing, they love to see that at the vet school. So I would definitely encourage you to get as many different experiences as you possibly can. I mean, it can really only be good for you to see different things and to figure out what you're interested in. And obviously that'll help you figure out maybe, what vet school you want to go to, if you want to go to a tracking or a non-tracking school, what you want to specialize in, if you want to specialize. So just keep that in mind. Definitely be better than me and get as many experiences as you possibly can. Okay, so back to experience hours. This is another thing that I don't have the exact number for just because it's been so long since I calculated that and I had to get like the timesheets from my jobs at the time, so I don't have that information anymore. But if I am calculating it correctly, I had somewhere over 1,000 hours, I believe. So that was from working full-time for a few summers, either 2 to 3 summers, and then part-time during my junior year of college. So Yeah, it was somewhere in that range. A lot of vet schools have minimum hours that you need to hit, so I know I was definitely above that, but I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of 1,000 hours or so. As for letters of recommendation, I got 4 total. I think Vimcast allows you to submit up to 6 and at least 3. The recommendation requirements vary by school. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I had 3 from DVMs that I had worked with previously, and then 1 from a college professor. And then finally, the fun part, I guess, the schools I applied to, where I got accepted and where I got rejected. So I applied to 5 different schools: K-State, CSU, Oregon, Davis, and Penn. So if you don't know, I am a Kansas resident, so applying to K-State was like an absolute must because the cost of veterinary school is kind of insane. But I also was not initially crazy about the thought of living in Manhattan, Kansas, and, you know, going to my rival school. Not that that actually matters, but, you know, yeah, applying to K-State was definitely a given, something that I would absolutely do. My dream school, my absolute number 1 in my heart, was UC Davis, not just because they have such a great program, but also because both of my siblings are currently residing in California, and so I really wanted to move out there and be closer to them. My sister especially, she lives in Northern California, so that was a big motivator for me to apply to UC Davis. So yeah, anyway, so of those 5 schools, I was outright accepted to Oregon. I had an interview for K-State and I had an interview for CSU, and then I got rejected for both Davis and Penn, which honestly, both of those programs are extremely competitive, and I knew that it was going to be a long shot, especially with Davis, just because my GPA was good, but for Davis you have to have like super mega star grades and statistics. So, you know, I threw my net out and I didn't get it. So it is what it is. That's all right. So yeah, for my interviews at CSU, I did MMI, and then at K-State, I had like the traditional interview format. And if you want to hear more about that, I actually do have a video dedicated solely to interviews and my experiences. So I will go ahead and have that link down below. All right, so now I'd like to talk a little bit more about Vimcast specifically and kind of what I believe are the 3 fundamental areas that you should focus your energy and your attentions and efforts on in order to even consider applying to vet school. So those 3 areas are academics, so this includes your coursework and your GPA. I guess you can include standardized testing such as the GRE, but I'm mainly focused on the other 2 things. So academics, experiences, so veterinary and animal experiences, and then finally interpersonal relationships, which might sound odd, but this definitely plays a role not just in getting you a letter of recommendation, which is something that you will need to apply to vet school, but also just in the longevity of your career in the future. All right, so starting first with academics, so coursework and GPA, I'm going to be very honest. As I said earlier, it is very hard to get into vet school. It's an extremely competitive program, and so you do need to have a solid GPA in order to get accepted. Now, do you have to have a perfect 4.0? Not necessarily. I didn't. I tried, but I was not able to achieve that goal. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people have GPAs lower than mine as well and still get accepted into vet school. I will definitely say acceptance is very much so a multifactorial thing, and while GPA is really important and you do need to have a good GPA, I don't think that it's the end-all be-all by any means. Now, I say that I know some schools do have like a minimum cutoff GPA. I can't name any off the top of my head. That's something that you'll have to do in your own research. But just keep that in mind as well when you are looking for what schools you want to apply to. A lot of schools have minimum cutoff GPAs, and a lot of times the same schools accept students from a higher range of GPAs, if that makes sense. So just keep that in mind. Definitely focus on your academics and try really hard to do well in all of your courses, especially your science courses. So as far as coursework goes, you absolutely do not have to be a STEM major in order to apply to vet school. That being said, it might be a bit easier if you are a STEM major, specifically like a biology major, chemistry major, whatever, simply because the classes that you'll take in those majors will definitely line up more easily with the prerequisites for most vet schools. Now, can you be a history major and still go to vet school? Of course, but it will probably be a lot more difficult to try and get in all the classes that you need for vet school whilst also fulfilling all the requirements for your major. So definitely just keep that in mind. If there is something else that you're passionate about, that you want to learn more about, then, you know, go for it. But just do keep that in mind. It might be a little bit harder and you might have to take a few extra classes each semester in order to both fulfill your major requirements as well as the prerequisites for vet school. So it is really important to just make sure that you, 1, figure out what schools you want to go to, and then 2, look up what classes they require for admissions. And this goes for everyone, really. You need to figure out what classes are required because it's going to be different for each vet school. I think UC Davis, I took an extra organic chemistry class, which, whew, that was rough. But I took an extra organic chemistry class because they required it. Most other vet schools only required 1 semester of OChem, but I did it specifically so I could apply to UC Davis. So that was great. But yeah, obviously there's going to be a lot of overlap between most schools. So like your Gen Bio, your Gen Chem, at least 1 semester of OChem, physics, probably some type of math. I took 2 semesters of calculus, I think. Yeah, biochem, all that stuff. So there's definitely going to be a lot of overlap, but there might be slight differences in what some schools require. As another example, I believe that I took microbiology specifically for K-State. I don't think that that was really a requirement for most other schools that I applied to. So definitely do your research, because if you don't have the prerequisite courses, that is a very good and easy way to get your application tossed out immediately. So definitely do your research there and make sure that you are talking with an academic advisor and getting everything planned out and ready for your application. And the AAVMC website does have a really nice chart that they update pretty frequently with the different prerequisites for different schools. So I will go ahead and have that link down below in the description. Obviously, things might change based off of when you're applying to vet school, so you might have to go directly to the AAVMC website, but I will go ahead and link the most recent version of that prerequisite chart down in the description for you. So moving now on to experience, there are a few different reasons why getting good animal and veterinary experience are just so important for your application. Perhaps the most important being that it gives you a real sense of what it's like to be a veterinarian. And that probably sounds like super obvious, but honestly, I feel like a lot of people don't realize exactly what this career entails and how difficult it can be, not just like physically and practically, but like mentally as well. So I know that's something that I didn't really understand until I started getting experience with veterinarians. So at my first clinic, they taught me a lot of really awesome hands-on things. I learned so many skills and gained so much awesome, valuable information from there. And it taught me a lot about what it was like to be a veterinarian. Both my first and my second clinic taught me that emergencies happen a lot more often than you'd like, and probably when you least expect it. So that was something that I didn't really, that's something I wasn't really aware about prior to getting those experiences. But as I said, I feel like a lot of people don't really understand what all this job entails, so that's why experience is so important. And I kind of touched on this a little bit more in another video, which I will also have linked down below for you, but the veterinary profession is really facing a crisis right now. Our mental health is just in the tanks, it's in the gutter, it's in the sewage, and people are struggling. Veterinarians are taking their lives at an alarming rate, and it's something that's being talked about more, and we're raising more awareness for the issue, but it is still such a prevalent problem in this profession, and that is definitely one of the reasons why admissions committees want to make sure you have a decent amount of experience, because they want you to understand that this is a very real part of the profession, and that whilst we are working to improve on that and, work on our mental health and all that good stuff, it's still a problem. So yeah, one reason why experience is really important for your application and for your life in general. And I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but getting good experience is so important, because you can learn so many awesome hands-on practical skills that, yes, they will teach you in vet school, but it might just be like one lab that they do over it, as opposed to getting to practice that particular skill multiple times a day, multiple days a week, and you can really get a good handle on that and come into vet school with that advantage. Granted, a lot of people do have that experience, but some people don't, and that's fine, but it is definitely a major benefit to getting good hands-on experience. I know at one of the clinics that I worked at, they taught me how to draw blood. They were starting to teach me how to place catheters, but that was kind of a struggle. How to vaccinate animals, how to restrain, all of that stuff. So yeah, obviously it depends on where you live and what your clinic is like, but if you can get that good hands-on experience, I definitely encourage you to do so. It is also worth noting that vet schools and VMCAS both differentiate between animal experience and veterinary experience. If you don't understand the difference, veterinary experience is basically anything that's done under the supervision of a veterinarian. So I know there are some experiences that you can have, maybe if you're working at a shelter and they don't have a vet on staff, that would be considered animal experience. And you can get lots and lots of hours of animal experience, but you really need to have veterinary experience in order to get accepted into vet school. And again, as far as types of experience that you want to get, obviously this completely depends on you and what you're interested in. But like I said earlier, I definitely encourage you to get as much varied experience as you can, because one, you get to interact with a bunch of different cool animals. I mean, duh, that's awesome. And two, obviously this helps you figure out what you might want to do in the future, if you want to be small animal, large animal, if you want to specialize in something, if you want to do a mixed animal practice. The options are endless, so definitely get as much experience as you can. All right, so finally for my 3 fundamentals, we are going to touch on interpersonal relationships. And this is so important, not just for getting a letter of recommendation, which obviously you will need, but also just for learning how to interact with clients, how to work with a variety of different people. These are all skills that will be applicable for you all throughout your career, because no matter where you end up, you're gonna have to work with people at some point. You know how the saying goes, animals don't walk themselves into the hospital, there's a human attached to them. So learning how to interact with clients and build good relationships with them is so important, and also learning how to get along with different coworkers, whether that's your veterinary technicians or doctors. Obviously that's very important. Yeah, it's a key part of your job that will persist for the length of your career. And honestly, having good mentors, in my opinion, is just so invaluable. I am so lucky and so blessed that I got to work with so many amazing doctors over my few short years working in animal clinics, but I definitely learned something from all of them, whether that's practical hands-on skill, or, you know, valuable knowledge and information about the job itself, or just like what the realities of this job entails. I gained so much from them, and I am so much better for it, and I can't thank them enough. So and finally, of course, I've hinted at this a couple times, but you know, beyond having awesome mentors and gaining knowledge, your mentors and the doctors that you work with will be very important in getting you those oh so key letters of recommendation. The recommendations do vary by school, so I know some will require like 2 from a doctor, 1 from like a non-veterinarian, or some might require all of them from a DVM. But in general, I do believe most schools require you to have at least 1 letter from a veterinarian. So again, that will vary by school, so do your research, but definitely just keep that in mind. All right, now we're going to talk about some other things that, you know, fundamental or not, I don't know, I guess it depends on what you think, but are still important and still worth noting. So now we are going to talk about money. Woo! Yeah, so not only is attending vet school pricey, but just applying to vet school can be kind of expensive. I believe when I was going through my application process, I ended up paying, I want to say somewhere in the ballpark of $500 to $600 in fees, and I believe that was just for VMCAS and not including supplemental applications, which I believe are usually around $50 each. So again, that's something that's going to vary by school. Some schools do require supplemental applications and some don't, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, that might not seem like a ton of money to some people, but you know, back when I was doing this thing, I was a broke college kid trying to afford groceries and rent, and also afford to apply to 5 different vet schools. So you know, it was a little tough. I made it work, but definitely something to consider. You may want to start saving up as early as you can, just so you have that money set aside and it's not something that you have to worry about. And I only applied to 5 schools, and that's about how much I paid. So the fee schedule does change by year, I think, and I do believe that you can do a fee reimbursement for some of the programs. I'm not really sure how that works. I remember signing up for a fee reimbursement. It wasn't the total cost, but they did give me a little bit of money back, which was nice. So definitely look into that. Know that that is an option as well, but you will pay that cost up front, and then potentially you can be reimbursed for a little bit of it later on. All right, so now let's talk about writing skills. So this is more so involved in the VMCAS application itself, but definitely something to, you know, think about and prepare for. If you are not like the most phenomenal writer, that's fine. Definitely reach out to, like, if your campus has like a writing center. I know that KU had a writing center that you could set up appointments for, and I'm pretty sure it was free, or at least included in tuition. So definitely take advantage of those resources if you can. If not, you know, find a friend, find a classmate, someone who can look over your essays and help you edit them. Take the time to really be thoughtful about your essay questions and your responses, because your essays are your opportunity to really show your passion, and it is the part of your application that helps you show your personality, and this is where you can really stand out from other applicants. Most other things are just numbers, statistics, classes, whatever, but in your essays you can really take advantage of those essay prompts and share why you're special and why you deserve to be in vet school. Lastly, I am going to talk about organizations, leadership, and just experiences outside of vet med. Honestly, I'm not really sure how big of a role this plays in the application and acceptance process, but I do know that I was asked questions about my life outside of vet school. Like I said, this profession is going through some struggles, so I know that certain admissions committees like to, ask questions about, okay, what do you do outside of vet school or vet med? What are you interested in? How are you going to find balance? That was definitely like a question that I got at one of my interviews, so they do care, and they want to know that you are capable of not only exceeding in the classroom, but that you can also take care of your mental health and, take care of yourself as a person, because that is so, so important, especially when you're in vet school. It gets tough, and sometimes we all go through it. We all go through hard times where we're just struggling a lot, and having that balance in your life and having the ability to move away from vet school, move away from your notes, and just like take a break is so, so important to the longevity and well-being of your mental health. So, and like I said, one of the organizations that I was in, Omega Phi Alpha, was so amazing, and I really feel like it made me a well-rounded applicant, and it taught me so much outside of just vet med and science and school, and I feel like I gained a lot from that and became a better person because of it. And in one of my interviews, I was actually asked a question about one of the leadership positions that I held in that organization. So just something to note. And so I know a lot of you are probably curious about the interview process and all of that, but like I said, I do have a separate video on that, which I will have linked down below. I did both a multi-mini interview and then a traditional interview, and both were very interesting in their own rights, but I don't want to get into all of that again. So I will have that resource linked for you. Definitely go check it out. And yeah, hopefully you find some helpful advice and tips in that as well. Well, that pretty much does it for this video. I hope you found some of the things I said helpful, and I hope that my experiences and my advice will encourage you to pursue vet med if that is what you are passionate about. Despite how tough vet school can be and how frustrating this job sometimes can be, I have not once regretted my decision, and I'm so, so thankful to be in the position that I am in now. So if you have any questions or anything, definitely be sure to drop them down below so I can go ahead and answer that for you guys. But yeah, I hope you found this helpful, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!